Coming up on the Men at the Movies podcast, I sit down with Robert Moore to discuss The Green Mile. John Coffey shows Paul and the other guards things that they can't unsee. Each event is like a step in faith, from a personal experience of healing all the way to recruitment and risk to share the good news with others. Like Coffey, God asks us to take what looks dead and hopeless and to give it to him. It's risky. It's uncomfortable, but transformation and healing always is. Join us as we discover God's truth in this movie.
The movies and stories we love are gateways to see ourselves and God in new ways.
Every great story borrows its power from a larger story, the story that's written on our hearts and woven into the fabric of our very being.
Hello and welcome to the Men at the Movies podcast. My name is Paul McDonald, and joining me here live in the studio is my buddy Robert Moore. How you doing, Robert?
Hey, I'm doing great. So happy to be here. Yeah.
He's definitely low energy today. He spent the last week at a youth camp that our church does with probably a couple hundred kids.
3,000.
3,000 kids, couple thousand kids.
Yes.
3,000 kids, and not just 3,000 kids, but he was wrangling, herding with a D, not a T, herding, shepherding 12 middle school boys.
Yeah.
So whenever you listen to this, just lift him up in your prayers that he continues his recovery process.
Yeah. Yes. I appreciate all prayers. Yeah. It was an experience. It was truly an experience, you know. But I realized it wasn't about what I experienced there, or what I went through as far as just being tired and worn out. It was what I poured in. And I recognize how sometimes when you pour in, you have to know that there's going to be a time where you're going to have to be replenished and you're going to have to just kind of be poured back into. And so what I experienced was well worth the pour.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome.
There was a line that you shared from the week last week that we're actually sort of going to apply to our movie today.
Yeah.
And I know Robert, I met him, I don't know, earlier this year, maybe last year.
Yeah.
At our men's retreat.
2022.
We talked about it on his podcast, God's Glory and Real Men Stories.
Right.
So check out his podcast as well after you listen to this one.
Right. Definitely. Listen to this one entirety. Yeah. So you can decide if you actually want to listen to me over there.
And so we've kind of developed a relationship. We go to the same church. We serve together. We do the men's retreat together now. And yeah, it's just been a real treat. We've been talking for an hour and a half already, and it seriously feels like you just got here.
Yeah, it always happens that way. Like 2 hours later. Okay, so we going to actually do something, or this has been fun. I truly enjoyed the conversation beforehand, but no, I'm excited about now what everybody else gets to receive from our conversation. Yeah.
So when we talked, I guess last March, I said, okay, dude, you need to come on the podcast. You're like, I don't know what movie. Yeah, and then I think we were in the dining hall. I was getting food, and you came up. You're like, dude, I got the movie.
Yes.
The Green Mile.
Yes.
So what was it that made you, that kind of the light bulb clicked on and you're like, this is the movie you want to do?
That was really great because I'm not a big movie person. And so most of the movies, I'm a comedy guy. Most of the movies I grew up on were like Jim Carrey movies. Nothing that I could truly see unpacking that would be worthy of a conversation where you're going to do nothing but laugh.
I mean, you talked about Poser, and we could do The Mask.
Totally. There it is. Like I said, I grew up with comedy. Yeah. But as I was talking to somebody there that was, we were having a just quick conversation in passing about how, like, you know, with some of the conversations we have up there at Outpost, you know, we're sometimes taking on and we're experiencing a lot of other people's trauma, a lot of people's hurt,
their stuff,
and you can sometimes end up carrying that stuff back with you as if it's your own. And it's not until we can not only experience and process what they're going through, being empathetic, recognizing that what they went through was valid, but then being able to give that stuff along with them back to God and saying, let's pray about this. I don't have the answers, but let's pray about this. And that allows you to release what you're carrying now that they shared with you in being vulnerable. And I referenced the movie The Green Mile to this person. I said, it was just like in The Green Mile, how there was a process of like, I recognize you're carrying something.
Mm.
Let me help you carry that. Let me take that from you. And now I'm giving that back to God.
Yeah.
And it was like when that happened, I think I saw you moments later. I'm like, dude, I got it. I don't think it's just random that this movie just came to me and referencing it to somebody else. And so I was ready to go.
Yeah. And now here we are several months later before we actually could get it scheduled and on the books and stuff. It's almost like we have busy lives or something.
Right. But or more importantly, maybe it was supposed to happen after like the things that we've been through, like the Youth X camp I just came back from and stuff. Maybe it's now richer to be poured out now, more so that before it would have maybe been like a light pour. Now it can be a heavier pour. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. And so one of the things that came up for you that one of the pastors said, that the speaker said at the event, was he prayed that the kids would see something they can't unsee.
Right.
Not in a bad way.
Right.
Because, you got a bunch of crazy middle school kids. Weird shit happens.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. And there's some things that you can't unsee that actually we don't want you to take back home with you. Let's just leave that as we didn't want y'all to witness that. But no, there were some awesome things that we witnessed that you can't unsee. So you go home trying to explain how God just did that, how you just witnessed that. Like, and it brings forth emotion. It brings forth certain feelings that you're like God, wow, what are you doing? Like, how did you just do that? How did that person know? Like there were people that spoke into people's lives where they felt like I'm the only one that knows that. I'm the only one carrying that. And now you just shined a light into my life that allowed me to feel seen now. Now I'm in the spotlight and it's like, whoa, that's heavy. You knew, and you used that person to speak into my life. And so, yeah, there were things that a lot of those kids left to where they are processing themselves to say, I can't unsee what I just experienced and what I just saw there. And I don't want that to just be a weekend.
Right.
That can't just be a weekend that I forget about and I move forward in life and I just act like that didn't happen. That just happened. And now what do I do with it?
Well, because that's how the enemy works, right? We get these moments, these seeds, right, that get sown. And so, and we know this from our men's retreat,
right? That
we leave and a week later we look back, we're like, did that really happen?
Right.
Did I have this like breakthrough where I actually experienced freedom from something that had been plaguing me for years, maybe decades?
Right.
Did I just witness somebody come to faith in Christ? Like, did Jesus move in this dude's life?
Right.
And it feels like, oh no, that was just an emotional high. That's just sort of a fog. That's just something that happened there that doesn't apply to my real everyday life. And it's very easy for I want to say easy because it is.
Yeah.
The enemy will come in just like Jesus talked about in the parable of the soils. The enemy will come in and snatch up those seeds before they have time to take root.
Yes.
And that's why it's important, like as we've done for a little bit now, before we hit the record button, of processing the stuff that happened during the week, the conversations that you got to have with a kid, or other leaders experiencing even with you. And hey, do you need some coffee? And just like experiencing that grace and that gift of God in the moment. Where
Right. Yes. That there were moments where God just further let me know, I see you right now. I know what you need to make it through this day. I know, and I love how he'll work through other people. Sometimes you're waiting on God just to pour a cup of coffee from heaven. And the truth is he'll say, no, I got the coffee coming. Stop being so crazy. Good and well, there's not going to be coffee that pours from heaven. I'm going to pour it directly into your life through somebody else. But it's in knowing that he's going to carry you. He's going to strengthen you. He's going to provide you what you need to do and be exactly who he needs you to be in those moments. And I can't, when you said something that made me just, I can't overlook this right now because it just it's
You can't
banging
unsee
at
it.
me. I can't unsee it right now. No, seriously, literally. And there was a moment this past weekend where there was an altar call, and one girl immediately got up and walked to the front. She was the only one there for about 5 minutes. And her faith inspired hundreds of other kids to come to the front. But I love how Tim called her to the stage and said, "Come here, I want you to look at this. I want you to watch what your faith just inspired." And you couldn't unsee what happened next. How her faith and her desire to want to walk with Christ inspired so many other kids in that moment, in that evening, to come forward. And I truly believe like that was just one of those moments that I forgot about, but it literally just hit my head with something you said, to where it's like it's in those moments that I can't unsee that. I can't unsee how her decision made others say, whatever it is that made her hop up, I mean, immediately, and step to that stage, I want to go to. I want that too. And can't unsee it.
Right. Right. And we all have these moments. And it's interesting because you're coming off of the Youth X, and I recently went to Uganda for a couple weeks. And, well, not a couple weeks. I was there, I don't know, 10 days. It kind of is a blur.
Right.
Between the time change, the jet lag, all that stuff, you're running on fumes there.
Right.
But, and my job this time was to take videos of the medical clinic so that I can put together a video to sort of promote the work, to say, hey, here's what we're doing, invite people to partner in with the group. And this time I went with Heads, Hearts, and Hands. But one of the videos that I captured that really stuck with me, I can't unsee it, is one of the guys who's been doing this with my brother. It's my brother, the organization he started, and he's been doing it he's my brother's best friend. They went to med school together. They've known each other for a long time. And so I asked him, I said, so dude, if you were talking to somebody who's considering going on a trip, what would you tell them? And he said two things. First, he's like, if you're thinking about coming, don't come. Because if you come one time, you're going to keep coming. You're going to want to come back. It's going to stick with you. Then he shifted and got real emotional. And he said, but don't look too close. Again, going back to the idea, you're going to see things you can't unsee.
Right.
You're going to hear stories of children who grow up, whose parents died, who grew up in a family of 17 because the parents died, and somebody has to raise these kids, and they end up in a house with 17 other children where they don't know where the food's going to come from today. Where, you go into northern Uganda and you get stories of trauma of child soldiers, 8, 9, 10-year-olds being forced to beat their best friend to death.
Wow.
And he's like, don't look too close, because you see the need is so great and what we have to offer is so little.
Right.
Like, it's so easy to get overwhelmed.
Right.
So as we were talking, I'm like, there's this tension of seeing things we can't unsee. And that's what we see in this movie.
Right.
We are going to talk about the Green Mile at some point.
Yeah. We're going to try to rope it in because we're bad about going squirrel.
Yeah, for sure. And what I'm going to do with some videos is I'm going to take that don't look too close, and we're actually going to look close at some stories.
Right.
And that's what I think this movie is. It's that tension between things you can't unsee and this almost our natural desire to look away.
Right.
To not look too close, to, oh, that's just a coincidence that somebody called up and checked on you.
Right.
That's when stuff happens before we go on a mission, by now we know it's not a coincidence.
Right.
Because we've learned to look close. Oh, while I was in Uganda, my daughter was taking care of the car. She was taking care of the house, and she took my wife's car in, and I had a screw in the tire. So I was like, okay, I'll buy the tire. my daughter will bring it in while I'm gone. Well, then she shows up and they say, oh, well, you don't need 1 new tire. You need 4 new tires.
Mm.
And my response is, why didn't you say that when I was there? Why are you trying to manipulate my daughter?
Right.
Who I know, that's the research, right?
Right.
If a woman shows up at a car shop, she's going to get charged more work done, all this stuff. And, I'm in a place that has very limited Wi-Fi and I'm getting upset. I'm getting frustrated.
Right.
And I'm like, of course this stuff happens when I'm on mission.
Because it's trying to distract you from what your goal is. I experienced the exact same thing this weekend. Yeah. No, it's when you're doing a work and when God has you on an assignment, the devil does everything. The enemy does everything he can to distract you from what your end goal is. Because if he can distract you with something that frustrates you, if he can distract you with something that will take your attention off of what you're supposed to do to other things that you have no control over, then you stay stuck sitting with that stuff and you're worried about that stuff instead of where you're supposed to be going, what you're supposed to be doing.
Takes your eyes off of Jesus and you see the wind and the waves and all of a sudden you're sinking.
Where you going? Yep. That's exactly where you're going. And I too, like you said, those distractions come at moments when you're truly doing some breakthrough work, because it's in those moments that you're changing the life, you're changing the trajectory of another person's life that will one day change the trajectory of another person's life. But it's how our story plays a bigger part in some larger story. And if I can just distract you with what's going on back at home, then I can maybe change things to where that person isn't reached by you. Yeah.
And if we don't look too close, we'll miss it. We'll say, oh, this sucks. It always happens. I get distracted.
Yep.
I could have got lost for the rest of the night. I could have, because of the limited communication, like I made to my daughter, I was like, I am not mad at you.
Right.
Like I kept saying that because I was mad.
Right.
I felt like I needed, and this is what she called me and the cell phone, the signal sucked, but I'm like, look, I am defending my daughter because I feel like you are taking advantage of her.
Right.
Yeah. What you're saying, like he explained why it's an all-wheel drive. This tire is now bigger. We can't have a bigger tire with 3 smaller tires. All this stuff is like, okay, why didn't somebody tell me this a week ago?
Right.
I am standing up for my daughter. I am defending her. But at the same time, I was so frustrated because I couldn't communicate.
Right.
Like the phone was cutting out every 5 seconds. I was frustrated because I didn't know what would happen. All I knew is I had $1,000 bill on my credit card.
Right.
I'm like, what is going on? And if I go in with the approach that this is just what happens, if I go in not with my eyes open, knowing that the enemy's out to distract me and pull me back into this frustrated, striving, scarcity mindset.
Right.
Because I'm like, where's the money coming from?
Right. Yep.
Here I can't do anything about it. But maybe it will distract me. Maybe it will cause me to treat one of the team members harshly.
Yep.
Because I'm frustrated. Because I feel I haven't done my job as it right. I put this on my daughter who's trying to deal with her 3-year-old and now all this. So I feel guilty. I feel shame. I feel frustration. I feel lack. And if I respond from those areas without seeing the truth, without looking closely, then I will miss the point. I will miss something important.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. And like you said, it's a bigger, like you said, if we don't look closely at it, we'll just think it's well, of course I had to handle this. And then we'll miss what comes along with that. Now, because of that call, my frustration has me, and the anger and the hurt that's in me is now being passed over to others. Yeah. I'm touching other people's lives with that frustration and not the love and not the grace and not the desire to pour in. I'm touching you now with the hurt I've received. And it's crazy how you don't have to know a person to hurt them. It can be something simple as, wow, he was really snarky. Why was that? Am I not good enough? Did I mess up? And so it can spread like fire if you're not mindful and careful with how you recognize, like, you know what? I got boys to tend to. And if I let what's going on at home distract me, then it adds to the fuel of the frustration of man, the food is not what I thought, and the sleep is not what I thought, and man, these boys are running me ragged, and all of that can take you away from God. What is it that you want me to speak into their lives? What is it that you want me to pour into their lives? How can I reach them so that they can experience you in a whole new way? I want them to have an encounter with you this weekend. And I don't want to be the one to keep them from that encounter with you by how I feel.
Because you don't know if one of those boys is coming from a home where dad works 80 hours a week.
Yes.
Where dad is short. Where he's
he allows his frustrations to fuel, and now you get that.
And now you're just hammering down, you're doubling down on something he's got from home instead of experiencing the grace and freedom of God as Father.
Yes.
Where we are called to reflect the love of God into the world.
Right.
But we've missed it because we allowed ourselves to get swept away.
Yep.
As you know, to continue on with the parable of the soils, we've allowed the worries of this world to choke out the seeds God is planting. God is sowing.
Yep. Yeah, and it is a seed. And understand, I tell people, I wasn't looking for full growth in a weekend, but I know the seeds have been planted. I know you can't unsee that now. Right. So now the question is okay, over time, as I got them back home last night, and I was like, well, look, I'm so excited for your son. He gave his life to Christ, but now now I have to make sure that seed isn't choked out by his friends when he gets back, isn't choked out by society's norms and different things and how they tell you, well, no, that wasn't really what it was. And it's a matter of like, hey, when will I see him again? I hope to see him Wednesdays when he comes back out to Elevation and we can continue to pour into him. I can continue to till it, that soil, continue to water it, continue. And understand, I may not ever see the full plant's growth, but it's my job to be the farmer who right now makes sure that seed has great soil. Make sure it's nice and wet. Make sure it's nice and I'm pouring into him continuously. And that's my part of the story in his life, regardless what I may see in the future. I just want to be here to be used in that area and not allow what's going on in my own personal life to mess that up.
And so now we're shifting.
I was about to say, how are we going to, I'm so curious how you're going to shift this.
We're going to shift this because we've talked about these two concepts.
Right.
Of things you can't unsee and don't look too close.
Right.
Because it's really easy in our social media 30-second world to skim over stuff, to keep it surface, to not see the person in front of you.
Right.
To not, I mean, for the 12 middle school boys, to not look close at them.
Right.
Because you've got 12 kids to worry about. I can't worry about this one that keeps lagging behind, that lost his suitcase, that...
I sure hope he listens to this. Hey, it's me.
That was me. That's why we remove all names to protect the innocent.
Right.
Or the guilty in some cases. But in this movie, what we see is the challenge to accept things that can't be unseen.
Right.
To accept the miracles.
Right.
And there's some sort of pathway in this of how the miracles progressed through John Coffey.
Right.
And if you haven't seen the movie, quick synopsis. John Coffey, played by Michael Clark Duncan, huge black dude, back in 1930s Georgia, gets sentenced to death for the raping and killing of two little white girls.
Yes.
As you pointed out, Robert, there's no way he makes it to jail.
Yeah. Yes.
He just gets killed right there.
Like, let's be honest. He should have been dead. The credits should have rolled after 10 minutes of the movie, and he dies.
Right.
The end.
But which is weird. Stephen King isn't normally for fairy tale type of endings or stories, but so he doesn't get killed by a lynch mob. He makes it to the jail. He makes it because he's found there, right, with the two girls holding two girls who are dead and raped, covered in blood or paint. It never really clarifies later on.
Right.
We will find out later he did not do that.
Right.
And that's the first part.
Right.
When we say don't look too close, Tom Hanks, his character is Paul. He's the sort of the chief prison guard.
Right.
He's the leader of the crew. But going back to that idea, don't look too close. This huge black man comes in and he says, "Hey, is there going to be a light on? Because I'm scared of the dark."
Mm-hmm.
And that again, that there's that tension. Here's this dude that does not appear to be what this file says he did.
Right.
Because the file's horrifying.
Right. It is.
I mean, he even goes to the lawyer, his defense lawyer, to ask him, because he's like, this dude doesn't seem like a hurtful. He seems gentle.
Right.
How could he do these horrible things?
And it's crazy you brought that scene up too, because like literally that defense attorney tried to basically say that, hey, look, I get what you're saying and I've defended a lot of people, but the day you turn your back on them and think that, well, maybe there is good in them, you'll realize really fast that there's evil waiting to bite. And he shared a story with him about his son, how they had a dog and he ended up having to kill the dog because the dog decided one day he was going to bite him. And I feel like so many people live with that, of like they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. One day it's not gonna be as nice as it is right now. Things are just going way too well, and I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because it can't be this great. It can't be going this well. There's got to be something wrong with this person. There's got to be wrong with something. I'm living in survivor's guilt. I'm living in imposter syndrome because it just can't be this great.
Yeah. Or the opposite side, where you walk around in fear, waiting to get bit.
Yes.
So you keep everybody at arm's distance.
Yes.
You're like, yep, you seem nice.
Yeah.
But
what's your
I'm not going to really let my guard down. I'm not really going to trust you. I'm not really going to become vulnerable. I'm not going to tell you how I'm really doing because I don't want you to use this information against me in the future.
There it is. Yeah.
And despite all this stuff that people keep telling him about John Coffey, Tom Hanks' character, Paul, he's like, this doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about in the story, he's got the worst urinary tract infection of his life.
Right.
I
think it was kidney stones or urinary. Yeah, it was something.
Seemed a lot more like kidney stones than a urinary tract infection.
Right.
But because UTIs don't tend to cause you to not be able to pee.
Right.
Kidney stones will.
Yes.
But it sounds like the voice painful. Of experience.
Well, I've known people. No. I mean, I'm very vulnerable. I'll tell you. But no. I've known people that have shared with me like what that pain is like and what that's like. I've actually, yes.
But we're not here to do a medical critique of this.
Correct.
Because what happens is John Coffey grabs Paul, puts his hand on his crotch, and basically heals him.
Right.
Scares Paul to death. He's like, what's going on? Let me go.
And he was so delirious from the episode he had where he wasn't even considering, like I remember when he said, I need you to come closer. Now, most prison guards would be like, it's just close enough. What do you have to tell me? But
he was about to pass out.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in that moment, the miracle that happened was not even recognized until like, I don't know what just happened, but I just watched something that I can't unsee.
Yeah.
Whatever he just did, I turn around and watch him release something, and I don't know what just happened.
But the next scene, he goes and he pees and immense relief.
Right.
And goes home and makes sweet, sweet love to his wife many times. So it's not just the removal of the disease, but it's almost like a recovery of age. I mean, and Tom Hanks back in 99, not that old.
Right.
But, his wife comments on, you haven't done this since we were first married.
Right.
And so that's sort of that restoration, not just, the removal, but the restoration.
Right.
In this situation, what can't be unseen is only really known by two people.
Yep.
Paul and his wife, Jan.
Right.
And I think that's sort of a pattern of how God works in our lives. One, and as you were talking, I thought about how often does God have to grab us by the balls
Yes.
to get our attention, to do something that we weren't expecting. Like Paul was at the point where he's like, I'm going to go to the doctor, but then
But they're just going to tell me that it's this,
he's
and
going to
it's not
give
going
me
to make
these
any sense.
meds
So why?
and blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. I'm just going to ride it out. And he's like, I can't do it anymore.
Right.
Again, that's when we're at the end of the rope
Mm-hmm.
is when God shows up the strongest,
Yes.
the brightest, the
Yes.
most. Like the Psalms are full of it,
Yes.
right? I was at this. I didn't know what to do. I need you to show up.
Story of my life. Yes. Yes.
Care to elaborate?
And listen to me. I know that God has always been in our ear, but it's in those moments where you're ready just to go ahead and crash and burn. You're ready just to say, you win. Life, you win. I'm done. I'm tired. I'm worn out. I'm at the end.
Paul was on his knees when
knees
John called him over.
Yes. Yes. And it's in those moments where God makes it to where you can't miss him. You can't miss the moment of him. Like, you can't explain it on nothing else. He makes sure he has your undivided attention. Like you said, he grabs you by the balls, and you can't explain it with nothing else but God. There's no other way to explain it, because you knew where you were going. You saw the rocks there. You knew what was about to happen, and he makes it to where you now can't overlook. I can't overlook what just happened there. And even though I choose not to live out of that, I keep it as a memory. I keep it close as a memory, as a reminder. So I'm never like the children of Israel, where I forget. I forgot what you just did last night. I forgot how you led us. I forgot how you opened up the sea. No, I remember it so that I can live. It humbles me, and it reminds me that God didn't just keep me from going off the edge for nothing.
Right.
There is a reason for that. And then the question and everything, and like in this movie, what now is the reason for that?
Right.
So.
Which again just goes back to that tension Paul's facing of, this guy's supposed to be a rapist and a killer,
mm-hmm.
but he just reached out and healed me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to, but he did.
He did.
And nobody else saw it. I think maybe one of the other prisoners saw it.
Right. Didn't know what happened. Didn't know what he just experienced. But he
was freaking out too. He's like,
right,
boss, help! Yeah, because everybody else had left. And that's what happens with us. That's the importance of like you said, not forgetting. You know,
mm-hmm.
the Israelites had the Ebenezers, the monuments that put a stone in there.
Mm-hmm.
We have, typically it's very helpful to have a journal to write down these moments, because otherwise they will get snatched.
They will.
You're like, that didn't really happen. For him, a week later, 2 weeks later, it's like, yeah, that was a weird thing, but it must have been a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
The kidney stone passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's fine now. The urinary tract infection cleared up, whatever you want to say.
Right.
Because we will rationalize the shit out of stuff.
We will try to make sense of it because it makes no sense.
Right.
Like based on what we know, how can we explain this without looking crazy to others?
Right.
So let me make logical sense instead of realizing that was supernatural.
Right.
I'm going to dumb it down to logic so I can explain it to others so I don't look crazy.
Right.
And yeah, it's a matter of like, and I think in those moments, guys like, no, you're not going to take that credit away from what I can do. So let me show up again. Yeah.
And that's what we see in the movie.
Right.
When Percy, who is the bad guy, one of them,
mm-hmm.
and in the very beginning of this movie, there's a mouse. This mouse shows up in the prison, and all the other guards are sort of intrigued by it.
Yeah.
They're curious. They show a little bit of wonder, and he's a bold little fella.
Yeah, it comes all the way up to us, close enough to us as if he wants to say something. Yeah. It's crazy.
But Percy wants to kill the mouse.
Right.
And so Percy ends up stepping on Mr. Jangles.
Right.
The name they gave the mouse, because he's a little trick mouse, so he called him Mr. D.
Right.
And in that moment, John Coffey says, "Give him to me, boss."
Right.
And Paul knows what he could do. Delacroix, who had been watching the mouse, he knows what he could do. But in those moments, we have a decision to make. We've got a dead mouse in our hands.
Right.
It looks crazy
To others that are there that
Right.
have not witnessed it.
to give him to John Coffey,
Right.
but he does.
Right.
And, does his thing,
Right.
and the mouse ends up alive.
He literally breathes life back. It's like he breathed into his hands, and I remember the first part that just was like remarkable is that his whole hand began to glow.
Yeah.
And then the mouse's tail started to wag, and it was you once again another thing you can't unsee. And imagine how many things in our lives where we've seen things like that, and it's like, okay, I can't unsee that. I almost wish I hadn't seen that. But now that I have, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
How do I move forward? How do I explain this to my own processing mind that's never seen anything like that?
And even Percy says, no, he can't be alive. I felt his skull crunch.
Right.
It reminded me of Lazarus, the death of Lazarus. When Jesus shows up, and it's almost like Jesus tells them, says what John Coffey says, "Give him to me."
Yes.
Because Mary couldn't. She couldn't even show up. She was still in the house when Jesus
Right.
shows up. And Martha says, she's like, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. And we know from reading about other miracles, Jesus didn't need to be there for Lazarus to have been healed.
Right.
But she says, but even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask.
Mm-hmm.
She's like hinting.
Right.
It's like, I know you could have healed him, but God will still give you what you ask.
But I'm just curious, though. Imagine if God had healed everybody in the Bible before they died. Where would that have left us with? Well, what would have happened if they would have died?
Yeah.
Like there's some moments where God took his time just to almost show like it's not based on your timing, because your timing, if it's always in your timing, then we'll just be expecting it like, okay, should be happening anytime soon, like coming up on a deadline. Like
God can heal people, but he can't raise them from the dead.
Yeah, right.
That's just crazy talk.
That's different.
Yeah. He can heal me from my urinary tract infection, but this mouse is dead.
Dead. And that goes to show, like, even with people's like goals, careers, relationships. If it's dead, it's dead. I mean, that's where God draws the line.
Yeah.
I should have gotten it taken care of. Maybe I should have prayed. Maybe I should have done more while I was still alive. And it's important to see moments where God's like, no, I'm not just a God of the things that are still alive. I'm a God of the things that are dead in your life.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And Jesus says, your brother will rise again. And Martha says, yeah, I know. Everybody else rises at the last day. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection of the life and the life. He doesn't say I will be. He says, I am. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? And I love her answer. She says, yes, Lord, I've always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God. She doesn't say, I believe you're the resurrection. She doesn't say, I believe that we'll never die. She says, I believe you're the Messiah. And basically, I think in a lot of ways, trusts Jesus to fill in the gap.
Right.
Just like the father who says, I believe, help my unbelief.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's good. That's good.
Because then she sends for Mary. And Mary shows up, says the same thing. It's like, if you were here, he would not have died. And again, he's like, where have you laid him? Give him to me, boss. Roll the stone away. He stinks. He's been dead 4 days.
This? Right.
And it takes a lot of faith to because we want to just say, oh, it's dead. Let's go
Right.
put it in a box and bury it.
Right.
But there's going to be places in our lives and in our hearts, as you were saying, it's like, it's not about a mouse. The story, we're not talking about a mouse here.
Right.
We're talking about hopes, dreams, relationships, all the things you were talking about that we feel are dead, that we don't want to give to God because we don't want to hope.
Because in the past, we've hoped for things that didn't come to pass. And so the last thing we want to do is hope that this situation will be different and be let down and have to carry that hurt from past situations into a new situation. And now we're hurt from this. So let's what is it? What do people say? They say, just, expect the worst.
Right.
If you expect the worst, then
You'll never get me disappointed.
There it is. Right. Right. And so we get used to that. We make that normal instead of expecting that God can change things around, or he still has a plan, even in whatever is about to happen. And I'm not going to downplay that he can't change this for good. He can't breathe life back into something that's dead. He can't bring things back together that were broken. He can't restore our broken hearts when it feels like this is something I'm going to have to carry forever. And that's exactly what he can do. But it's a matter of like, do I have hope? Do I believe? Wow, that's another whole message of like, I remember when there was a moment where I was like, hope is stupid. Like, hope will get you killed. I remember buying into somebody's perspective one time that was like, people hope for stuff just for it not to happen. And look where that leaves you. And I started sitting there thinking like hope will literally get, but I'll never forget my therapist one time said, so wait, so you're going to tell me that you're just not going to hope anymore? You're giving up hope? He was like, listen to that. Like that you sound like you've already buried yourself. You've already killed yourself off because there is no hope. So then what are we doing then? If there's no hope? He said, you're here talking to me right now because you're hoping that there's going to be better days ahead. Right. So
the fact that you were there talking to them means that you hadn't actually given up hope.
Yeah. So whenever a person buys into that idea that there's nothing they should hope for, I say, okay, cool. Then let God have it.
Yeah.
As he's saying, give it to me. Give it to me, boss. Let me let me show you what I can do with something that you're losing hope in. And that's where the miracles that you can't unsee, but you have to be able to explain later, begin to happen. And that's what God has called us to do, and that he wants us to be able to see these things that we can't unsee and then share those experiences with others and say, okay, well, if that could happen, what else can God do in my life, in others' lives? If he just breathed life into a mouse. It's almost like an experiment where it's like we test trial with mouse and rabbits, okay, all right, we look good. So where are we going now? We going to, let's try a human out. Let's send a human to space instead of just a monkey, There's not too many people that will be upset if a monkey doesn't make it back from space. I mean, there's going to be some.
Right.
I'm not
PETA would be
negating that.
upset.
There are certain people, there are certain organizations that will be pissed. But like, imagine how upset you will be if it doesn't work, but we were just about to send a human. So what's next? What are we going to do next? Is this all around the board? Is it just, does God just have the strength to bring mouse back to life? Or does he have the strength to bring other things in our lives back to life? Can he restore other areas of our life?
Well, and in the first instance, it was almost all he had to do was draw close.
Yes.
Come closer.
Yes.
That's God's invitation for us.
Yes.
We don't act, but he was sort of a passive experiment. Like Paul was a very passive participant in that the first miracle. In the second one, he had a choice. Give them to me, boss.
Right.
But it's growing. As you
Right.
said, first it was sort of we're a passive participant. Then we have an option.
Mhm.
Then we're given an invitation.
Right.
And the last one, and I wanted to, because you were talking about the hope, because that's what Peter says in 1 Peter 3:15. He said, "Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have."
Mm. Yeah.
Because if we walk around hopeless, what makes us any different from people who don't believe, don't follow Jesus?
Exactly.
Because they have no hope.
Right.
Like I look at the world today and see kids who come in and they're like, well, if I just die and I just go to nothingness, why does
Right.
anything matter?
Right.
If that's your outlook, then I would agree.
Mm.
It's like I wouldn't have hope for that either.
Right.
But if I have hope, not just for the resurrection of the afterlife, as Martha was saying, but I have a resurrection for this life, for the things that are
Right.
dead, then you go from passive participant, you go from being an invitation. And the third stage that we see is Paul becomes proactive.
Right. Oh,
He
that's
sees a
good.
need in the world.
Right.
He's like, oh, wait, I know somebody that can help in this situation.
Right.
So he's like, we got to figure out how to get John Coffey to the warden's wife because the warden has cancer, or the warden's wife has cancer.
Right. Right. And now notice how they could have lost their jobs.
Yep.
They could have lost their livelihood. They could have lost so much. There was so
They've
much that
risked
said,
everything.
don't go and do this. Like, we don't have to do this. He even told the guys, look, if you're not in, I totally understand. But there is a hope burning inside of me that I can't unsee what I've seen. And now I know that I need to take what I've seen outside of this walled off area of like, this is as far as he can go. This is as far as his miracles can go. I know where we need, there is another person outside of this box that needs to experience what we've experienced. And I'm losing sleep thinking that if I don't do something, that this will just die too.
Then I've failed. Right? Because there was an opportunity. And you said it before we started recording. When they got there, John knew what his purpose was.
Yes. Yes.
So he could face down the shotgun. He could face down the threats. And similar
Yes.
to when they showed up, when they found him with the two girls, it's like, there's no way this big black dude gets into the house in the middle of the night in Georgia in 1930s.
Right. Well, think about it. He could have easily let those girls wash up and dry out and die. He didn't have to be there. He didn't have to be. He knew that he had made a choice to be everywhere where he was going. And he knew his assignment wasn't over. Imagine the amount of conversations he was having that we didn't get to see in that movie that continued to let him know your assignment's not done yet. I'm not done with you yet. The identity others are trying to place on you of murder, that's not your identity. You know your identity in me. So stay the course and continue. Like even in the part that we were going to about the warden, you know, there's a man standing there with a shotgun. Now is normally where most people turn around and say, you got it. But no, it was like,
you let me know when the gun is gone.
Right. But he walked towards that man as if that man wasn't there, knowing that what was past him, going through the valley of the shadow and death, he knew that there was a mountain to climb now, and he knew his assignment was through him, and he had to go walk past him to get to the assignment that was there next. And that assignment was the one that was like, oh, okay, so this is not just a small healing God. Like we're not just talking about mice and
urinary problems.
Yeah, urinary problems. We're talking about like transformation of a person who was explained or described as like, I've never experienced anything like this before. The way she curses now, the way she hauls off and just
she wasn't who she was created to be.
Correct. She wasn't even who he had recognized her to be in all their years of marriage. And you know what happened in that room, what happened that night, which made the whole house shake, which made them look and be like, well, I mean, there was a moment where it looked very uncomfortable as he approached her in bed, and you're like, wait a minute, okay, what's he about to do?
Right.
Like, this doesn't look good on so many levels, but what transpired, what happened in that moment was nothing. You couldn't explain it any other way than, but God transformed, healed, brought back to life something that was dead, already deemed to be dead, already been told, hey, they don't have long to live. We're just gonna make them comfortable. Let's make them comfortable, you know. And that life, like, let's just make it comfortable. Let's make life comfortable. Hey, look, this is normal to me now. I'm just gonna like sit in the comfort of like knowing that I don't have long, but I'm gonna try to make myself as comfortable as I can in the dysfunction, in the brokenness, in the hurt.
That's just who I am, right?
Yeah.
That's just who he is. That's who she is.
Yeah. The doctors told me I only have a week, man. You know, why continue to fight? I'm just going to be comfortable. I'm going to get comfortable.
I am
now.
who I am.
And yeah, exactly. It is what it is. It is what it is. Oh my goodness. It is what it is. Like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be what it is. We say that as another level of comfort. It's like a pat on the back. It is what it is. It's okay.
Yeah.
And not handing it over to God to say, all right, God, it's beyond my control. It always was outside of my control. So what's outside of my control isn't outside of your control. I'm giving this to you now. I'm allowing you to do what only you can do, because there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
I can fight. I can be angry. I can scream. I can start to treat people a certain way. But now I'm going to allow you to do what only you can do, which only can be explained by you in this moment.
And it is uncomfortable to give up control.
Yes.
It is. We're not, at no point in the New Testament did any of the apostles' lives look comfortable.
Right. Or in their control.
Right. They're like, I'm going where the Spirit led. You know, Paul, I wanted to go here, but the Spirit didn't let me.
Right.
And, you know, all the stuff that Paul experienced and all the apostles, Jesus.
Out of control.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going where the Father leads.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making people uncomfortable because I know what they need for healing. And transformation and change is rarely comfortable.
Yeah. No. Matter of fact, it makes people almost attempt to kill you.
There's a line, I think, from Ted Lasso. The therapist says, the truth will set you free, but it'll hurt like a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
Or it'll piss you off.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you look at Jesus tells the rich young ruler, go sell everything you have. He's like, oh, I can't.
That's the uncomfortable part. I
Right.
checked off every other box. I was so the greatest
really close
applicant
on
for this
this
job. Like, my resume is impeccable. Oh, you got me. See, you
Right.
gave me something that I'm not in control of. See, that controls me. I am. Money is what makes me who I am, and Jesus knew that. You don't own money. Money owns you, and so it immediately made that guy realize, like, you're right. I'm not. I'm going to turn around.
We're having to give up the thing that owns us.
Right.
You know, whether it's Peter who goes from, you know, saying Jesus is the Messiah,
Right.
to no, we can't go up there. You'll die. And Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan."
Right.
Say from Peter saying, "I will never forsake you. I will never
Right.
deny you." He's like, "You're going to deny me." It's
3
like, "I'm going to
times
fight
before
for
the
you.
sun
I'm going to
even
cut
comes
this
up.
dude's ear off."
Right.
No, you're wrong, Peter. Stop. Put your sword away. Like Peter's
Right.
embarrassed in that situation.
Right.
Like, how disruptive is that to have been Peter? I'm going to defend you. I'm going to be with you. Put your sword away.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was doing what you wanted me to do.
Right. This is what the world tells me, to stand up and fight,
Right.
and to be aggressive instead of, like, you know what? Dial it back.
Yeah.
And watch. And
Follow
understand that this
Jesus.
is a part of the story.
We don't have to fight for Jesus.
Right.
Which is, I think that for me, the big climax of the movie is the death of John Coffey,
Yeah.
because they are conflicted. The guards,
Yes.
the guards are conflicted because they've
Yes.
seen the miracles.
Right.
They've seen the healing.
Right.
They know the truth. They know who actually did rape and kill those girls.
Right.
And we don't have time to get into some of those other nuances and stuff, because what you see is they're locking him into the chair, they're showing emotion, and they've
Right.
always shown him not emotion, but they've always held that moment sacred. They've
Right.
honored the person in the chair.
Right. But see, they were supposed to be stoic due to the people that are there watching. I mean, imagine, you guys are emotional, you're crying, but these people are still wanting to see this person die, but you're having to try to block out how you feel. But in the midst of it, you see every last one of their faces and eyes. And there came a point where it was like, I don't care what these people think. I can't. I'm overwhelmed by emotion based on what I have seen and what I've experienced through something that God placed here to change so many lives that I now have to kill. I have to. And the crazy thing, not even the crazy thing. The thing is that there was no parts of John Coffey that he wanted to be released, or he wanted to like, well, look what I've done for you guys. Now, what are you going to do for me in exchange?
Yeah.
It was a no. I've done what I was.
Because that's the lie of religion.
Yeah. Yes.
Is look what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
So now you do something for me.
What are you going to do for me?
I did these miracles, so you set me free.
Right.
So you fight for me. You try to get me pardoned.
Right.
And at no point, I love what you said. At no point did John Coffey try to get out, try to escape, try to avoid, say, I didn't do it. He's like, these guys know the truth. And that's all that matters.
Right.
Because just as Jesus, God, has power to raise dead things to life.
Right.
He also calls us to put things to death.
Right.
And there's a couple different visions, parallels, ideas that I get from that scene where they're killing him. One is they know the truth, but the people who are sitting there don't.
Right.
They're rejecting the truth.
Right.
And their tears, I think, are both, because they're having to put this thing to death, put John to death, who, I mean, if you had somebody who could walk around and heal people, that's a pretty good thing.
Right.
Who could set things right.
Right.
Because Percy, now in the mental home where he was going to work, Wild Bill, who did the raping and killing, is now dead.
Right. But more importantly, you know that it wasn't this person, but yet you still have to carry out something that you know nobody will be able to understand if I try to explain to them it wasn't him. That I will end up in the mental hospital. But so you have to carry out something, but knowing, and I don't think we even talked about this earlier, but knowing that everything dies with John Coffey if I don't ever speak on this story. And notice how at the end of the movie, or at the beginning of the movie, he said, I've never told this story before. But it's in everything dies with what we've experienced and what we've seen if we don't turn around and talk about it. If we don't turn around and share what we've seen. If regardless of how crazy we'll look, if we don't tell the story of how God has met us in our failure, in our defeat, in our brokenness, and our loss of hope, then nobody else will ever be able to experience what we've seen. But it requires us to open our mouths. We got to tell those stories. We have to talk about it. None of those kids' parents or friends will from the youth camp will be able to truly be able to experience what they experience. But the only way they can even have a taste of it is if they talk about it. They're going to have to come home to their friends who don't understand, who won't understand why it was even like that, or like why should I go? And if they can't explain what they can't unsee or even begin to talk about it, then the next generation of kids, the other kids that are in their area, their community, their schools, will never be able to fully see and understand that there's something greater than just what I can do that's happening at a camp that my friend went to. There's something greater in my life due to my neighbor sharing his story with me of what happened with him and his wife and what they went through. It's something greater. There are so many greater stories that are just dying with people because nobody will continue to carry that story.
In this age, we're now losing the World War II generation.
Mm-hmm.
Like the men and women who fought in World War II are getting to the age where there's very few of them left who actually were there.
Right.
And how few of their stories are passed on.
Right.
But that idea that you said, like, if the apostles stayed in the room in Jerusalem after Jesus died, even after he went back to heaven, after they saw him,
Right.
if they had not said anything,
Right.
then it wouldn't have spread. The gospel doesn't spread.
Right. Or imagine if the story had been left that Jesus just died and nobody ever shared that we saw him after his death.
Right.
Imagine.
Because it doesn't, we saw him die.
Right.
No, I saw him in the garden. I saw him on the road.
Right.
I saw him in the room.
Right.
I saw things that don't make sense and I
Right.
can't unsee.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's in me telling about it. It's in me writing about it, which is why a friend of mine told me, he said, it's great that you can tell about it, but sometimes you have to create something that's going to live past you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a book. Sometimes that's a podcast that can tell the story even when you're not here.
Yeah.
They can continue to inspire and bring hope to people who are looking for hope in their darkness by listening or reading something that said, there's still hope. There's still life. Your story's not done. You're just in a bad chapter right now.
Yeah.
You're in the valley of your book. It's cool. I think I heard it this weekend. You can't have a valley if there aren't mountains on both sides.
Mm. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a prairie.
Exactly.
Super boring to drive through.
But yeah. So that should inspire somebody.
Sorry,
right
Iowa.
There. No. Yeah. They're like, well, we just have.
What do we do? We're
valleys.
just sitting here. We got drive-by shooting for Iowa.
Right. But yeah, no, it's in knowing that your mountain is right on the other side of this valley you're walking through. So know that your story's not done yet. And when you get to that mountaintop, you should have a whole story to tell.
Yeah.
You should have a whole book to tell of how you have seen things that you can't unsee now. And so, yeah, that right there, those type of things just inspire me to say, man, I can't wait to tell about the things that I can't unsee now, things that I witnessed this past weekend, this past month, this past year, in 2021 or 2022, that pulled me out of 2021 and previous years. You know, if I don't tell about it, then how am I going to reach those who have something similar to me, who've lived a life or experienced things, or who think that their story is over with now and want to go ahead and write the end like I wanted to write the end? It's like, yeah, no, you don't get that's not your call.
Yeah,
people are looking for the rest of the book. They're looking for the sequel. They're looking for the next part, and it's not your job to end the character's life or write the end of that book, because that book's just beginning.
Yeah,
God needed it to get to this point. He you know, I got to say this real quick, and I know we're running up on time. Recently, I was reading the full story of Samson. A lot of people miss this. They just love the part where he gets with Delilah and then he pushes the castle and kills all the Israelites. But there was a decision he made when he initially wanted to be married to a Philistine woman, and his parents were totally against it. And but then it put in parentheses, and I can't remember who. There was a Pastor Furtick, actually an old message where he talked about how, but God had already orchestrated his decision to want to marry that woman. Had already orchestrated it for an encounter with the Philistines. It was orchestrated. God had orchestrated that. It wasn't his bad decision that God turned for his good. No, God said, hey, look, what looks bad to you guys, I'm using to create the perfect story. And so that one, what that let me know was that, you know what? Yes, we have made a lot of bad decisions, but sometimes there are decisions that God was sitting with us in like, yeah, well, you're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and use this now for my good. I'm going to create this next encounter. This is mine.
Right.
I'm writing this one. You're not that good. You're not that great. I'm writing this one. And yeah, it's a decision that most people will look down on and say, man, what were you thinking? But God was like, what I was thinking was that what's going to come after this chapter is going to be only explained by, and then God stepped in and said, now we're warming up.
It's
Now
kind of
we're
the quote from Braveheart. I'm going to pick a fight.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's just like, yeah, Samson, you had to pick the Philistine woman to be your wife.
Right.
Because that's going to be the trigger point.
Trigger point
to freedom for my people.
Yes. Yes.
What looks like a horrible, dumb decision that you're breaking all the rules.
Right. Right.
Is actually going to bring freedom for the Israelites.
Exactly. But it took that decision. It took what looked bad for it to turn into you finding 300 foxes. Still crazy story. You guys
Samson
really need to read this whole story.
Crazy story.
Crazy story. Like just everything that transpired. There's prostitutes in this story. This story was crazy.
Game of Thrones level stuff.
Yes. But in the end, what all happened out of a story that looked chaotic was remarkable.
Yeah.
It was remarkable. So wow. All right, I'm gonna shut up now.
No, we're good. So the last part that I wanted to share is the second half of what Peter said after he said about giving an answer for the hope that you have. Because it says, but do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. And I think if we look at that scene, if they had stood up for John, they don't listen. If they had told the truth to an unhearing people,
right,
they're not just wasting their time, they're actually making things worse for John.
Right.
But what does he do? He tells the story. Paul tells the story when someone asks.
Right.
Like that's what Peter says. He doesn't say go around beating the head of everyone that you know with the gospel.
Right.
He says give an answer.
Right.
Which tends to mean there's a question.
Right.
That opens. Why are you like this? Why are you so peaceful? Why do you have hope?
Yes.
Your life is falling apart and you seem totally okay. Where do you find the stability? As you said, most of us if we look at green, yellow, or red to say how well we're doing, we're orange. Somewhere between yellow and red.
Right.
But what would it look like to father, to husband, to lead those young boys, the middle school boys from green? What would that look like?
That the poor that green would provide them would be a poor that they couldn't deny. They would feel loved. They would feel heard. They would feel seen. They would feel things that they may have never felt in their own homes. But if I'm not well, if I'm not in green, then I can't provide them that. All I can provide is the hurt, the brokenness,
right,
the sadness,
the stuff they've already got plenty of.
I've already got plenty of that I'm recognizing and that I'm just holding on to, the bitterness, the resentment. Oh yeah, you guys get some of this too. And so that's what the cup I'm pouring from. It's a dark liquid instead of a clear, loving liquid, something that tastes great, something that fills those spaces of you that needed to be filled, those areas that needed to be heard, those moments where I say things that you're like, wow, I'm not alone right now. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about. That's what showing up with the light and the love that Christ came into this world with looks like in us, in our lives. That's what it's all about. Yes, everybody can call out another person for not doing it the way they think they should be doing it. You're not doing it the way right. You're not getting this right. You're not showing up right. You're not condemning others. But it's like, yeah, but like the fact that I show up with love and grace and patience and pointing them to a person who forgives all things so that they can forgive themselves, so that they can begin to love themselves and not only just experience his love, but realize that in his love, I now know how to love myself is where it is what it's all about. Because now you just set another person on fire. His love has set another person, the lamp that we carry that's just barely going out as we sit in this dark cave. He sets that thing ablaze so where we can go and now ignite another person's flame.
Yeah.
It's just a constant flame, torch passing. But instead of passing a torch, you're lighting the next person's torch so they can go light the next person's torch. And not to say that there aren't going to be people that are going to try to throw water on yours. They're not going to try to fan yours out. But it's in being able to say, I'm running low right now. I'm you know what? I've poured so hard that my flame is, and now somebody comes back to you, like the men who Jesus healed. And out of the 3 of them, one of them came back to say, by the way, I want to relight your flame. I appreciate you lighting mine, but I noticed yours is running low. I'm going to relight your flame now. And it's those are the moments where now, all right, let's go. I feel encouraged. I feel seen. I know that what I'm doing isn't just for nothing. It's not, I'm not getting anywhere with it. It's not actually being recognized. No, there's people that have come along that have let you know what you're doing. It inspired me. It touched me. It provided me hope. It gave me a reason to keep going. And those are those moments where guys just letting you know you're on the right path.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on the right path. And those moments are beautiful. I don't get enough of those moments. Not that I need them, but it's encouraging to just recognize how God's just trying to let you know through others, yeah, you're making a difference. Keep going.
And those are the moments you want to make sure that you see.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't close your eyes to it.
Right.
Don't skip over it. See it, receive it for the validation from God that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So Robert, thank you for stopping by and hanging out and talking for a couple hours here in the office.
Right. It's I love in-person conversations. Well, you know me. I'm not gonna turn down a conversation with you. What they don't know is the conversation that's gonna come after this. We'll probably be here for about 3 more hours.
Probably.
Maybe. We'll see.
I'll kick you out around dinner time.
You're right. As long as you feed me first.
So I really appreciate it. Where can people find your podcast and YouTube channel and stuff?
Well, so most people can just find me simply by typing God's Glory in Men's Real Stories. That's if you can type that in the internet, you're going to find it some way, whether it's through YouTube, whether it's through Spotify, through Apple. But yeah, between God's Glory and Men's Real Stories, or just maybe even searching me on Instagram, Robert Moore III. You can find me at any of those areas. And, I don't think it's about finding me, but I think I like to post stuff to where people in finding me can also see and experience and find Christ in their lives, because following me is not going to, I'm not looking for more followers. I'm looking to point people to the person I'm following and I'm seeking after. And in that right there, that's all I could, I'd notice how we're in a world of followers and being affirmed and feeling like that's the focal point of life. Like, if I can get more followers, it's what it's all about. But no, I recognize that, like, I want you to follow after him, and he's going to make sense of so many things that you will later be like, I can't unsee that.
And I'll put links to all your stuff on the show notes on our website, menatthemovies.com/podcast. And so this has been Paul McDonald and Robert Moore III talking about the Green Mile. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you join us next time here on the Men at the Movies podcast.
Something inside has been awakened. I can no longer be who I was before. But if I am no longer who I was, who am I to be?